Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Group Captain Peter Wood. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are currently serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private James Frederick Anderson. James Anderson was born on the 24th of December 1905 in Lawrence, New South Wales, the son of James and Florence Anderson. He had 4 brothers, Mervyn, Alan, Ray and Aubrey, and 2 sisters, Ethel and Sylvia. The family lived near the Tweed River in New South Wales. After leaving school, James worked as a farmer. In 1930, he married Jean Arley Wilson, and the couple went on to have 3 children, Jim, Florence and Phyllis. Anderson enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 10th of March 1941, aged 35. After marching out to join the 5th Infantry Training Battalion in Tamworth, he embarked from Sydney on the 29th of July, arriving in Singapore in mid-August. That October, after being hospitalised with mumps, he was taken on strength with the 2nd 18th Battalion. Following Japan's entry into the war in December 1941, the units of the 8th Division were involved in fierce fighting against the Japanese forces on the Malayan Peninsula. The 2nd 18th Battalion was part of the final defence of Singapore, but on the 14th of February 1942, Commonwealth forces in Malaya were forced to surrender, and Private Anderson were amongst the 45,000 British and Australian troops who became prisoners of war. He was initially held at Changi Prisoner of War Camp, but the Japanese soon called for walking parties to build and expand new infrastructure across their empire. In July, after a brief hospitalisation with beriberi, Anderson volunteered with B Force, which left for Borneo in July 1942. The men had been assured of better food and conditions, but the almost 1,500 members of B Force found themselves on a hellish sea journey, crammed in the cargo holds of the Ubi Maru for 11 days before arriving at Sandakan. Conditions at Sandakan soon devolved into some of the worst experienced by prisoners of the Japanese. Prisoners, including the sick, were forced at gunpoint to work on the construction of a military airstrip and were often beaten by their captors. Illness and death ravaged the camp and food was scarce. The completed airfield was soon destroyed by Allied aircraft bombing, and between January and May 1945, those prisoners who could be made to walk were forced in a series of marches west to Ranau, a distance of around 260 kilometres. Those who were too sick to make the journey were left behind to die or were killed by the guards. Among these was Private James Anderson, who died of malaria on the 10th of June 1945. He was 39 years old. Of the more than 2,400 prisoners in Sandakan, only 6 survived the war. Jean Anderson did not receive confirmation of her husband's death until November. He was deeply mourned by his family, who placed in memoriam notices in the newspapers for years after his death. One, inserted by his children, read, "We often look at your picture and you smile and seem to say, 'Don't grieve, I'm only sleeping. We will meet again someday.'" Private James Frederick Anderson is commemorated at the Labuan Memorial in Malaysia, and his name is listed in the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed this day beside the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private James Frederick Anderson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.